and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose, and I'm so happy that you decided to tune in and join us today for another great segment. We're here today to speak about family, and to join us is Michael W. Smith, and he is a Christian counselor at the House of Healing. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael.
Thank you for inviting me back. Great.
Appreciate you taking time out of your business and your life to come and share some great information with our viewing audience. But before we get started, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and your history.
Yes, I'm a professional counselor, and I specialize in working with Christian families. I do marriage counseling and family counseling and individual counseling. I've been a counselor here in Maricopa County for 31 years.
Wow, 31 years.
Yeah, I'm a senior citizen.
Are you? Wow.
Yes.
Well, you don't look like a senior citizen, so.
I feel like it.
Yeah. Do you? Well,
yes.
Hey, they say you're as young as you feel, so age is a number, right? But 31 years, so you have quite a bit of experience
Yes.
under your belt then.
It's all here in Phoenix.
You're more than qualified to share then about family and counseling, and you have a family of your own and
Yes, I do.
children.
Yeah,
and
married, got 2 children, 2 grandchildren.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's very exciting. Well, thank you again for being here. And for all of you watching at home, we are speaking about family today, and the topic is marriage counseling. That specifically, of course, is what you do. I know you don't just do marriage counseling, but
Right, that's one of our services.
with regard to marriage counseling, can you tell us some of the key factors, before we cover just divorce, but what are some of the key factors that cause troubles in marriage and just relationships in general?
Well, generally speaking, you know, over the last 5 decades, the pressures on the family have accelerated dramatically. Things are completely different from when I was young. Mm-hmm. And the pressures of finances and the economy are just wreaking havoc on families. And I've seen a very large increase of people coming in for marriage counseling because the economy is so bad and the finances are so poor, and people are being laid off and losing jobs or having cutbacks, and it's causing quite a bit of problems. You know, statistically, I run into the usual marriage counseling things. You know, infidelity is the #1 cause of divorce, and lack of communication, sexual problems, child rearing problems, everything that you would expect would be, you know, part of a marriage problem. That's common issues I run into.
Infidelity, that is such a really a major issue, and I think
that's actually the #1 issue
for divorce, for
Yes.
relationship problems.
Yeah.
What do you think is one of the main causes, other than the fact that, of course, it's selfishness and people fulfilling their own desires? What is one of the main reasons you think that that's such an epidemic, and it really has become an epidemic in today's society?
Well, it's become an epidemic, and the reason for that is, like I said, our society has completely changed over the years with the advent of the internet, the sexualization of our society. For example, what is infidelity now? It's changed. Mm-hmm. Is it cyber sex? Is it phone sex? Is it internet porn? Years ago, when I was a child, families didn't have these kind of pressures. It was the normal type of thing. Someone met someone at the office, mm-hmm. an office affair, somebody falls in love with somebody else, and then the marriage starts to break down. Now it's quite a bit different. Even defining infidelity now is debatable. The basic problem is, whether it's on the computer or in person, the breakdown occurs when one spouse loses the trust of the other one, and they can't trust them anymore. And that trust theme kind of runs through the whole system. That has to be rebuilt during the counseling process.
And do you find that the trust is lost, of course, after the infidelity, after, not before?
Yes.
So what is considered cheating?
Well, that's a good question. That's a great question, and it's changed. Mm-hmm. So, for example, to one person, infidelity would be a chat room. Mm-hmm. Another person, it would be an office affair. But when you do the counseling process, you have to take each case individually and find out what each person's individual definition of it is. Because a person can feel betrayed by someone actually having an affair, or by having a relationship over the internet, or phone sex. Mm-hmm. You know, with the advent of the computer, everything has changed. Yes. For example, internet pornography has run rampant through our society because of the internet. And many people are getting divorced over pornography because one spouse feels betrayed over the other one.
What is something that a spouse can do to help their spouse? Let's say that a couple were to come to you and say, you know, I've done wrong, either the husband or the wife or the man or the woman in the relationship has said, you know what, I messed up. What can they do to make steps to recover from that and also to rebuild trust in the relationship? Is it possible to really rebuild trust in a relationship?
Oh yeah, I save most of the people that come to me for marriage counseling, we save the marriage. The key to it is saving the first marriage, because statistically, the second and third marriages have higher divorce rates. So the key in counseling is trying to save the first marriage. If you do that, you're going to save multiple divorces. Most divorces are about 50%, mathematically. If a second marriage, it's like 58%. A third marriage is in the 60%. If you have a family that lived together before they got married, those statistics are even higher. They used to call it living in sin years ago. If you live together before you get married, your chances of getting a divorce are higher. When they come to me, I have to make a determination where we are on that process. How far has the relationship deteriorated? And then you have to find out, first of all, if there's genuine love left between the couples. If there is, the marriage is salvageable. So the earlier you catch it, the better chance you have of saving their lives.
What are limitations? What are healthy limitations that couples should have as far as their private time alone, as far as their own individual lives? Once you're married, everything should be open, should it not? Passwords should be shared. Information should be shared. Everything should be open to the person, because it keeps accountability. And how do you work out those boundaries in essence? And should there be boundaries? You
just highlighted with that question and the second biggest cause of divorce, which is a lack of communication between the partners. In our society now, which they didn't have 50 years ago, there's so much computer and so much technology involved in people's lives that their interpersonal relationships are now separate. Drifting. Yeah. Yes. So this one's got an iPad, an iPhone, an internet. This one's got their, and you'll see the couples kind of drifting off literally into their own lives. And a lot of times they don't communicate anymore except through email. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's very common.
I sleep next to this person every night, and I only speak to them whenever they're at home. And that's, I actually know people that do that, and that's...
Yes, happens all the time. See, the communication breakdown is the second most frequent cause of a divorce. This person no longer is able to communicate with that one. This one no longer trusts that one. So during the counseling process, what I have to do is break those issues down specifically. Then they have to be rebuilt individually. And once you do that, you can save that marriage. I save most of the marriages that come in.
That communication that you were speaking about, how it's so important to be open, that goes to finances as well. Do you think it's good to have separate bank accounts, joint bank accounts? How much should that be spoken about between couples? And is that something that it almost could be made into a teamwork where you do a budgeting together and do things together? So what kind of advice could you give people on the financial aspect and having date nights and doing things, and how important it is to balance that?
Well, that's a good question. You just highlighted the third major reason for divorce.
Maybe I'm in the wrong business then.
You should be a marriage counselor. You've missed your profession.
Yes, well.
Finances. Disputes over finances is the third number 3 reason people get divorced. And you just highlighted the problem. The main issue there from a counseling standpoint is to find out what each couple is comfortable with. Sometimes you'll have one spouse that kind of keeps the family books and runs, and it's okay with the other spouse. The problem develops when this spouse that's not in control of the money senses financial infidelity on this spouse, and then the system starts to break down. It can be corrected by doing exactly what you just said. Open communication between the couples. Where's the money going? What's being spent on what? What do we need to do with the finances? It's exactly what you said. It's open communication. And during the counseling process, I go through that specifically, taking each step, one step at a time, to break it down.
And if there's couples that have been married for a long time, I know many people, there's people out there that are celebrities you see that they drift apart. They get to the point where they're not even sleeping in the same bedroom anymore. It's more like they exist together. First of all, what really leads to that? And then what can they do to, in essence, begin again and start again and rebuild that relationship? Is it possible once you get to that point to rebuild your relationship and to become friends again and to fall in love again? And how do people do that?
It is possible. I see it happen all the time. You just highlighted a fourth very important area.
Again, wrong area of work, but
Boredom. Boredom is in the top 5 reasons people get divorced. And again, it's because
boredom?
Yes.
Really?
The spouses
how is that
get
a reason? Do they really put that on divorce paperwork?
Sure.
I got bored.
Well, I'm not sure if
or
they
is
put
that
it on
irreconcilable differences? Is that
no,
what they
that's
call
different.
it? Oh.
No, that's a different subject.
That's probably what most people
No,
just kind of write
the
on
boredom
there,
kind of seeps in almost like a tide coming in. And it's as the couples kind of separate their lives, and she's doing this and that with the kids and the job and the career, he's doing this and that with the career and the computers and the friends. As they kind of start drifting apart, the couples get bored with each other. Okay? And so that process in counseling has to be taken one step at a time, how you can specifically start doing things together, planning things together, doing joint projects together, as opposed to drifting off into separate lives.
Yeah.
That's what causes it. They get bored with each other.
It's staying friends. So is it important to
staying
date
friends?
then?
Staying friends.
And to speak and to find those common interests. And I think that's why it's so important before you even get into marriage. What are some of the things that you should look for in a partner before you get married? Because it's not just physical attraction. If you're getting involved in things premaritally, it's not just a sexual attraction. Those things, they become not necessarily boring, but people change.
Yeah,
so what are
exactly.
certain key things that people should look for in a partner? They may think they're smitten with this person, but look 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road.
Right.
What are things that people should look for, common interest, and things that they should do?
That's exactly right. For example, the divorce rate accelerates when 2 people of different religions get together and 2 people who cannot prioritize their lives. When you get married, you become, in essence, kind of one person. And if one person's going in that direction, the other one's going in that direction, you're staring at a breakup. If you don't have a commonality of interests, for example, I want children, I don't want children, all these things need to be worked out before the person gets married.
And those are things I think that they say don't talk about religion or politics on a first date, but I remember whenever I was dating before I met my boyfriend that I was like, that was one of the first things I would talk about. I'd say, why am I going to waste my time and my emotions? And I think that people need to be more objective whenever they're dating and have more of a purpose as to what they're looking for.
Yes.
And so you say religion can be a deal breaker, and it really can.
It's a deal breaker.
Especially if it's something that they believe in.
Yes.
And that they're firm believers in.
Yeah, it's one of the top 10 reasons for divorce. 2 people of different religions, Christian, Jews, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever it is, that
coming
normally
together.
does not work.
That's not unity.
Because you've got not only your personal issues, but you've also got family input of 2 different religions. That can cause an enormous amount of stress on the family.
But they also say opposites attract. And so where is that fine line between opposites? Because I know that, like, in my own personal experience, I've tried to date people that had my exact personality type. And at first I loved it, but then it was continuously butting heads. And so now I found a person who's very opposite of me personality-wise. We have a lot of the same interests. So is it important to kind of learn to complement each other? Because if you have 2 strong, stubborn people equally, it's going to continuously be head-to-head. Is that true, or have you found that it helps to complement each other in different ways?
Well, that's very true. Now you've kind of opened up another door here. You're talking about personality temperament now, and when they say opposites attract, what they're talking about usually is personality temperaments, not disputes over whether I'm going to have children. Is this my religion? Is that your religion? Where are we going to live? What kind of a career we're going to have? Those things all have to be worked out in a way on paper before you're married. Or if they come for marriage counseling, I have to work that out in the counseling process. What you're talking about is the opposites attract, adding to the kind of the initial excitement and the spice to the relationship. This personality's temperament's a little different than that one. But on a long-term basis, if you don't have respect and trust for this person's character and their integrity, that marriage is eventually going to break down. whether your personality temperaments are similar or they're just completely diverse.
Yeah, so it starts from the beginning to the end. Before you decide to say I do, just make sure that it's right. Don't get so excited about the wedding and this and that. And then
Yes.
once the wedding's over, it's not a wedding anymore, right? I think that people get caught up in that. And with all the shows now of the wedding and wedding dresses and all this, I think people forget about the reality and the fact that after the wedding, you have life.
Yes. Life and
Yeah.
work and love.
Yeah.
Then it kicks in.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Michael. This has been a great first segment about marriage and marriage counseling and how important it is to really work together and be in unity.
My
If you have
pleasure.
any questions, I know that Michael would be happy to answer them for you. It's Michael W. Smith. He is a Christian counselor with House of Healing. It's 602-636-5800. The website is hardcorechristianity.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be right back after this short message. Don't go anywhere.
My husband says social drinking relaxes him, but he's not very relaxed when he comes home at night. He's always ready to pick a fight. I don't think he's an alcoholic, even though I think he drinks too much. My psychiatrist suggested I try Al-Anon family groups. I was surprised at how quickly I found help at Al-Anon. Are you troubled by someone's drinking? You might be surprised at what you could learn in an Al-Anon family group meeting from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or visit alanonfamilygroups.org.
Joy in our town. I'm your host, Vanessa Rose. I'm so happy that you're still with us for this great program, and we are speaking about family. We are here with Michael W. Smith, and he is a Christian counselor with House of Healing. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having me back.
Appreciate you taking the time to be here with our second segment.
I'm enjoying it.
And our second topic, we are speaking about children and the challenges of raising children today. And I think that that's a very important topic, and I think that's something that today being the key word, the challenge of raising children today. And we've encountered so many more issues than maybe there was 40, 50, 60 years
Much
ago
more.
with other generations.
Much more.
What challenges arise due to current economy coupled with materialism?
Well, the main problems with raising kids, as you just mentioned, it's much more difficult now because children grow up twice as fast as they did when I was young. I'm a senior citizen, and when I was young, I didn't have 1,000 different things to do that children have now. And kids grow up twice as fast as now as they did when they were young, and that's very bad for the family unit and very hard on children. For example, when I was young, children were introduced to sexuality 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. Now the average age for losing your virginity is between 10 and 14.
10 and 14?
Yeah. Now can you imagine that? Now when a child gets involved...
It's between 10 and 14 is the average
currently,
age?
Yes, so statistically.
I didn't even know what that was at 10 years old. My goodness, I was still
didn't
playing
either.
in the cul-de-sac with my friends.
You were.
That's, yeah.
You should see me.
Yeah.
I was amazing. See,
Wow,
so
that's
when
so
I was
sad.
young, nobody was hot for teacher. That was never happening, ever. Nowadays, it's actually happening. The problem with that is children are not spiritually and emotionally capable of being adults at that age.
Oh.
And they're not able to take on the responsibility of being an adult. The second main problem is the same thing we discussed on the marriage program. The computer age has really damaged children because there's so much coming in that is a negative, like violence in video games, sexuality on TV, movies, DVDs, iPods, iPads, everything. These children are growing up so fast, and their characters and their morals are not being given time to develop, and they're going off into drug addictions, alcoholism, marijuana usage, addictions. Very, very difficult now, and very young ages is what's amazing about it.
And I
Grade
think-
schoolers, junior high school kids, addicts.
And it's really important to stress, and I know that we've spoken about this before on here, but to parents to really monitor what their kids are looking at, because I think that as a society we've become so desensitized to
Yes.
things that are on television. And if you really take the time to sit down and look at what's on TV, listen to what's in the lyrics of the music,
Yes.
it's continuously a bombarding of sex and of violence. And it's just a continuous stream into our children's minds, into their life. And it really, to tell parents, to really stress how important it is that those things are going into their mind. I know parents that will sit there and listen to rap songs with their kids. Oh, well, they just like the beat. And I say, do you listen to the lyrics? And that's really going into their soul and into their mind, and it really has an effect, doesn't it?
Yes, it has a very strong effect on their character. And the key word you used is desensitization. Psychologists call it systematic desensitization. If you expose someone to any type of environment, good or bad, over a consistent period of time, it will become non-existent to them. So if you hypersexualize a child by the time they're 15 years old, what should be embarrassing and what should be shameful and where there should be innocence, now they're just like adults because they've been exposed to it on a systematic basis over a period of years.
And does that come down to being the kid's parent versus their friend and not letting them wear the... I see 10-year-olds walking around in little crop tops and mini shorts, and
like
I mean,
adults.
they're like little, they look like little, you know, adults that are dressed in completely indecently. I mean, if you saw an adult dressed that way, you'd say, you know, put some clothes on.
Yeah.
Is it important to be their parent and not their friend, and maybe not to be the cool parent, but to know that it's going to have a positive effect on them later in life?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. The children are growing up too fast now, and I'm getting family counseling situations, and there's all kinds of emotional problems and stress in the family dynamics because kids are not growing up as kids anymore. They hit 11 and 12 and 13, and boom, they go right into adulthood. And that's very stressful on the family. The second major problem is, believe it or not, is in our society that's changed is education.
Yeah.
If you don't have money and you can't send your child to a charter school or a private school, most kids go into the public school system. And if they come in as addicts or they come in from a family with a single parent, statistically, the dropout rates go up.
Wow.
And once they drop out of high school in our society, it's very hard now to get a job because most service jobs have been sent overseas. The service jobs that are left are very low-paying jobs.
So it's so important to make sure our children are educated and to push them and to help them with their homework and to keep them accountable and make sure they stay in school. It's so important that they finish high school and finish grade school. Maybe they won't go to college, but to make sure they finish that, get a high school diploma.
Yes, and for example, there's 20 million families in America that only have one parent.
Wow.
And they're raising 40 million children with only one parent.
Wow.
And there's 40 million people in America on food stamps. Everything's changed from when I was young. And so these dynamics are just crushing in on the family. And people are having to come in for counseling. They need help.
They are, and I know that that also affects the psychological being of children and also obesity. Obesity is a major problem with children now.
It's huge. It wasn't when I was young. You know, the 50% of all children are now overweight, and 20%
50%.
50% are overweight.
Wow,
and 20%,
that is something that people, I didn't realize it was that high. 50% of children are overweight.
20% of them are morbidly obese. So now you're looking at more pressure on the family unit through childhood diabetes, high blood pressure, all kinds of physical illnesses when they're in junior high.
Wow. So you mix that with a single family home, low income, health issues. I mean, it just adds more stress and more pressure on the family.
Yes.
If they are married, it adds more pressure onto the family. What can you do to help your child if they are facing obesity? Like, I know that there's very few cases where it's hereditary and it's something that they have to fight. But if you're feeding them things that they shouldn't be feeding, if they're psychologically depressed or sitting in front of the TV or sitting in front of the computer, what can you do to encourage parents to help their children come out of that cycle and maybe help themselves?
Yes, well, in my experience as a counselor, when they bring the children in for me for counseling, I usually focus on the emotional aspects of what the child is going through. And then I take each maladaptive behavior literally one at a time, and focus on each one of them and change each one. They all have to be changed individually. So it may take several sessions to go through what is hurting the child, what behaviors need to be changed, how their attitude needs to change. That's what I do in an individual setting.
And so that way it kind of helps them. But as a whole, if in general, if people are watching and they can't go to counseling, what are some of the things that you've seen in a general sense? I know that you can't give a direct answer to that, but what in a general sense that affects children, especially that are facing obesity?
Well, see, it's the participation of the adults with the child. You know, if it's a single family home, the amount of time that the child's able to spend with the parent diminishes. Wow. All right? So the more time the adult spends with the child doing productive things such as exercise, such as trips, such as recreational activities, such as changing your diet, modifying your nutrition, all that can be used to reduce the obesity epidemic. But it's swept the country. The main problem is, of course, fast food. That's the number one problem.
I think and television and computer and iPod and everything is...
Yes, everything's a sedentary lifestyle.
Everything's right here without moving. I've gone to restaurants and I see kids with their families and they're not even looking at their parents. They stay like this the whole time, and I want to go snatch it from their hand and be like, you know, talk to your parents and go tell the parents, hey, what are you doing? Do you realize what you're doing to your child? They're lacking the ability to converse with adults and with human beings. And
That's great.
And that's, I think, has a huge effect on the obesity. So is it important to take away your kids' electronics and say, no, only this amount of time, and go play in the neighborhood with your friends, you know? And I know it's not as safe now, but yeah, of course. And you face the fact that it's not as safe now. And, you know, if you're living in a neighborhood where there's not as, you don't know that you can trust the people around you, but have the friends over, you know, do whatever you can to keep them active is important. But
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a great show being here with you. A lot of great things to share with families about marriage, about children, about family, all things that pertain to each and every one of us. We all have a family, whether or not we like them. They are a family. And if you have any questions, I know that he would be happy to answer them. It's Michael W. Smith. He is a Christian counselor with the House of Healing, and the phone number is 602-636-5800, and the website is hardcorechristianity.com. Thank you so much for watching at home. Thank you again for joining us and taking time out of your day. I know that this has been a great, encouraging program for you. Family, children, marriage is something that affects you all. I hope that if you have any questions that you'll contact him, and also just do some research, take the time, and know that the more time and effort you put into your family and children, the better results you're gonna get. Go give him a hug, let him know you love him, and have a blessed day. We'll see you here next time on Joy in Our Town.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Joy in Our Town brought to your home every day. So write Joy in Our Town, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.